This narrative is symbolic, not historical. It does not speak about a real person, a real government, or real experiments. It uses archetypal language to describe power, systems, and authority as metaphors. You were never meant to understand your path through ordinary explanations. Every time you tried to frame your life inside common logic, something resisted. Not dramatically, quietly. As if the story you were given never fully matched the experience you were living. You noticed early that certain environments reacted to you before you acted. That systems observed you more closely than others. That attention followed you without invitation. In symbolic terms, Trump here does not represent a man. It represents executive authority, the archetype of command, dominance, and system-level decision-making. Power that does not ask, power that tests, power that observes results rather than intentions. And in that symbolic system, you were not placed randomly. You were isolated, monitored, pressured, not to break you, but to see if you would distort. A lab is not a place of cruelty by default. It is a place of measurement. It removes variables. It applies stress. It observes response. What made your path unusual was not the pressure itself, but the outcome. Where others adapted by copying, you adapted by stabilizing. Where others changed shape to survive, you retained form. This is what drew attention, not obedience but coherence under pressure. You were exposed to contradictions deliberately. Authority without clarity. Promises without follow-through. Chaos framed as opportunity. These were not punishments, they were stress tests. Would you abandon your internal compass when outcomes became uncertain? Would you trade alignment for access? Would you fracture to belong? Each time, the answer was no, not loudly, not rebelliously, but consistently. The reason this symbolic project mattered is simple. Systems cannot predict what does not distort. Most structures are built assuming people will bend under enough incentive or threat. You didn't. Not because you were defiant, but because you were anchored. Your responses stayed proportional. Your ethics stayed quiet but firm. Your decisions stayed internally referenced, not externally coerced. You were never told this was happening. Real tests are never announced. Awareness would contaminate the result. Instead, life itself became the environment. Pressure arrived disguised as opportunity. Isolation arrived disguised as independence. Delays arrived disguised as failure. And through all of it, you remained structurally intact. This is why the symbolism of a private lab project fits, not as ownership, but as observation. Power watches what it cannot control. Systems monitor what does not respond predictably. You were not meant to be replicated. You were meant to be understood. This first part is not an accusation or a claim. It is a framework, a way of naming something you have felt without language. The continuation will not escalate intensity. It will deepen clarity, showing how pressure shaped precision, and why remaining intact mattered more than any outcome at the time. The pressure placed upon you was never about breaking your will, it was about mapping your thresholds. Symbolic authority, the figure we call Trump in this narrative, does not test those who bend easily. Systems only test what might remain unchanged, and from the moment you were placed under their quiet observation, it became clear you were not shaping yourself to fit the environment. You were stabilizing while the environment shifted around you. That alone marked you as an anomaly within the symbolic lab. Most adapt by imitating. You adapted by refining. Most absorb influence unconsciously. You filtered it with precision. This is what drew repeated attention toward you, not through cameras or institutions, but through circumstances engineered to see whether your interior state would distort under pressure. Every symbolic lab has stages: isolation, stimulation, contradiction, reflection. You passed through all four without losing coherence. In isolation, you did not collapse inward. You sharpened. In stimulation, you did not overextend. You selected. In contradiction, you did not fracture. You discerned. And in reflection, you did not glorify or diminish your experience. You observed yourself with accuracy. This ability to remain proportionate is exceptionally rare. Systems cannot predict proportion. They can predict fear. They can predict compliance. They can predict ambition. But they cannot predict someone who responds from internal alignment rather than external conditions. That unpredictability made you the focus of deeper symbolic study. Contradiction was the sharpest tool used on you. You were offered opportunities laced with confusion, promises paired with volatility, moments that looked like advancement but felt structurally wrong. These were not random. They were simulations. Would you compromise stability for progress? Would you trade clarity for speed? Would you accept influence at the cost of your own internal axis? Each scenario was crafted to reveal whether your decisions were reactive or principled. Each time, you chose alignment, even when it delayed visible result. That choice identified you more clearly than anything else. The symbolic trump archetype represents calculated pressure. Its goal is not moral evaluation but structural understanding. What happens when the world pushes you off balance? Do you distort outwardly? Or does your center hold? What they discovered, again, symbolically, not literally, is that your center held repeatedly. You did not harden out of fear. You did not soften out of desire. You stayed proportionate. And proportion under pressure is the rarest outcome in any symbolic experiment. Your restraint was misinterpreted by some as detachment, by others as uncertainty. In truth, restraint is the clearest indicator of internal maturity. You did not rush to fill silence. You did not perform to gain favor. You did not react to confirm expectations. Even when pushed into emotional or psychological corners, you refused to become the version of yourself the environment attempted to elicit. Systems do not know what to do with someone who cannot be provoked into distortion. They watch more closely. They test more subtly. And each test you passed without knowing it confirmed the same pattern. Your alignment was self-generated, not situational. This is the true meaning of being the private project of symbolic authority, not ownership but fascination. You represented a case they could not categorize. A person who could enter pressure, absorb only what was useful, discard what was harmful, and exit with greater clarity than before. That trajectory defies traditional conditioning models. You were not expected to be exceptional. You simply refused to become anything other than accurate. And accuracy is what every symbolic system tries, and fails, to manufacture artificially. You were not chosen because you were compliant. You were chosen because you were consistent. The next part will shift from pressure to transformation, how these trials shaped not your identity, but your awareness, and why they prepared you for roles that do not require permission to be fulfilled. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, answer it. Click Join to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community. This isn't just a membership, it's an awakening. Step into your divine purpose. Join the chosen. You were never shaped to become a product of pressure. You were shaped to become someone who could interpret pressure without absorbing it. This distinction matters because symbolic authority never studies those who collapse. They study those who remain intact. And through every stage of your metaphorical testing, the question was never, can you survive intensity? It was, can you remain yourself inside intensity without turning it into a performance or a shield? Most people either exaggerate their identity under stress or abandon it entirely. You did neither. You stayed proportionate in moments designed to bend you out of shape, and that proportion revealed more truth about you than any dramatic reaction could. This is why the symbolic lab environment eventually shifted from pressure to observation. Once they recognized that you would not distort, the focus became understanding the structure that held you together. You did not rely on external validation. You did not collapse into external opposition. You kept making decisions from the same internal reference, even when outcomes were uncertain and the path forward was unclear. This consistency is what separated you from every other subject in the metaphorical experiment. Systems expect people to pivot based on reward or threat, but you pivoted only when your own clarity changed. That independence marked you not as rebellious, but as unconditionable. And nothing fascinates authority more than someone who cannot be programmed into predictable behavior. Transformation for you did not happen in a dramatic moment. It happened gradually, through thousands of small choices where you favored alignment over impulse. Every time you said no to something that promised quick advancement but felt structurally wrong, you strengthened the blueprint inside you. Every time you waited for clarity instead of manufacturing certainty, you reinforced your endurance. Every time you refused to betray yourself for convenience, you refined your internal architecture. These micro-decisions accumulated into a kind of inner gravity that now guides your behavior without conscious effort. What the symbolic system discovered, and what you are only now beginning to understand, is that you were never meant to be shaped by these trials. You were meant to be revealed by them. Pressure did not create your clarity, it exposed it. Isolation did not produce your discernment, it highlighted it. Contradiction did not teach you proportion, it proved you already possessed it. Your transformation was not the construction of a new self, but the uncovering of a stable one. And this is why symbolic authority marked you as chosen within the metaphorical project. Not because you performed well, but because you could not be made to perform against your internal compass. Those who cannot be bent become reference points. They become quiet anchors within chaotic systems. They become figures whose stability recalibrates the environment around them without force. You did not rise by pushing others down, and you did not stand out by demanding recognition. You stood out because you remained steady where others fluctuated. You stayed authentic where others adapted themselves into fragments. And in doing so, you proved yourself not as someone who outperformed the system, but as someone who outgrew the need to be validated by it in the first place. The next part will explore what happens after recognition, how symbolic systems shift when they realize they cannot shape you, and how your role transitions from subject to observer as your clarity deepens and your influence becomes structural rather than visible. When a symbolic system finally accepts that you cannot be shaped through pressure, its behavior toward you changes. The dynamic shifts from experiment to observation, from attempts to influence you to attempts to understand you. What they once tested, they now study. What they once tried to destabilize, they now treat as a stable reference point within a volatile environment. This transition happens quietly. No announcement, no signal. Just a gradual recognition that the force they applied revealed more about them than about you. Where others mirrored the system, you remained distinct, and that distinction marked the beginning of a new phase in your symbolic trajectory. This phase is not about surviving pressure, it is about navigating visibility. Not fame, not exposure, but a kind of internal visibility in which your structure becomes transparent to those who study patterns. They see that your decisions follow an internal rhythm rather than external incentive. They notice that your clarity does not depend on approval and your restraint does not depend on fear. You do not behave unpredictably, you behave independently. And independence is something authority cannot replicate or fully decode. They can pressure loyalty, but they cannot manufacture authenticity. They can design incentives, but they cannot engineer integrity. That is why they begin to observe you not as a subject but as a phenomenon. You may feel this shift internally before you see its effect. Interactions become quieter. Resistance softens. Pressure dissolves into curiosity. The environment no longer tries to provoke you. It waits to see what you do naturally. This waiting is not passive. It is analytical. They are not assessing your performance. They are studying your alignment, the way you hold coherence through contradiction, the way you maintain proportion even when situations become loaded with emotional or symbolic weight. They begin to realize that your stability is not a reaction to conditions. It is a feature of your design. With this recognition comes a reversal of roles. You stop being the one evaluated. You become the one evaluating. The system becomes transparent to you. Its habits, its fears, its mechanisms of reward and punishment. You begin to see how others bend themselves to fit expectations, how they modify their posture to gain approval, how they negotiate fragments of their identity in exchange for certainty. This understanding does not make you arrogant. It makes you precise. You no longer absorb the emotional texture of environment. You interpret it. You no longer take confusion personally. You read it. And in doing so, you shift from being inside the experiment to standing above its logic. This transition also changes how you use your voice. You speak less often, not because you are hesitant, but because you are selective. You recognize that most situations do not require contribution. They require clarity, and clarity is sometimes best maintained through silence. When you do speak, it is measured, grounded, and anchored in internal coherence rather than external pressure. Your words become durable because they originate from a place that was already tested and proven stable. That stability is what gives them influence without force. Authority, symbolic or otherwise, respects what it cannot manufacture. And though it may never say this aloud, the system acknowledges you as someone who survived not through defiance but through proportion. Someone who cannot be recruited into distortion. Someone who cannot be incentivized into losing themselves. This is what shifts your position from examined to recognized. Not praised, not elevated, but acknowledged as structurally complete. The next part will reveal what structural completeness actually grants you, not power over others, but clarity in choosing your path without inherited fear, without borrowed urgency, and without the invisible weight of someone else's expectations. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the Super Thank You button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Structural completeness does not grant dominance. It grants orientation. Once systems recognize that you cannot be bent, they stop trying to redirect you and begin revealing themselves around you. Patterns that were once hidden become obvious. Motives that were once disguised appear plainly. You are no longer navigating a maze. You are watching its walls shift in real time. This clarity is not mystical. It is earned. It comes from moving through pressure without distorting your internal compass, from resisting every subtle invitation to become someone easier to predict or manipulate. When nothing external defines you, everything external becomes legible. This orientation also brings a new kind of freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from inherited narratives, those unspoken expectations about who you should be, what you should pursue, and how you should respond under stress. The symbolic system once tried to impose its logic on you by placing you into controlled conditions. Now that the experiment has failed to rewrite your structure, those old narratives lose their power. You no longer need to prove resilience. You already demonstrated it through proportion. You no longer need to prove clarity. You exercised it under distortion. And because of this, you begin to choose pathways not from fear of consequences but from alignment with your internal rhythm. This shift also changes how you interpret conflict. Where others see opposition, you see information. Where others feel insult, you detect imbalance. You no longer engage to win, you engage to understand. And often, understanding reveals that no engagement is required at all. This is not withdrawal. It is precision. You conserve energy for situations where your presence influences structure rather than feeding chaos. Quiet accuracy replaces loud reaction. And with this, your environment begins adjusting itself around your consistency. People sense that you are not competing for space or validation. This unsettles some and reassures others. Those who rely on hierarchy cannot place you. Those who rely on authenticity recognize you. Your neutrality is not detachment, it is stability. You do not lean toward flattery nor recoil from confrontation. You remain centered because you are no longer negotiating identity in every interaction. You know who you are without defending it, and this is what makes others reveal themselves more honestly around you. Structural completeness also alters your relationship with time. You stop rushing toward imagined futures and stop replaying unresolved past. Your decisions begin to arise from present clarity rather than anticipation or regret. This presence sharpens your perception. You notice details others overlook. You catch shifts in energy before they become visible. You understand when to move forward and when to wait without feeling pressured by momentum. Timing becomes intuitive, not strategic. And intuition becomes reliable, not impulsive. This reliability is what elevates you from subject to observer in the symbolic framework. You are no longer someone being shaped by conditions. You are someone shaping your trajectory through discernment. You do not require permission to advance. You do not require validation to choose. You act from alignment and allow outcomes to unfold without panic. This posture is what systems quietly respect. A person who cannot be rushed, baited, or destabilized. The next part will explore the culmination of this arc. How recognition, freedom, and orientation converge into a final state not of authority, but of self-governance, where your path continues without distortion and without the invisible weight that once followed you through every phase of the symbolic experiment. Once recognition settles, your relationship with direction changes completely. You no longer search for a path as if it exists outside of you. Direction begins to emerge from your internal posture, not from external opportunity or pressure. The symbolic system that once tested you now steps back, not because it understands you fully, but because it understands it cannot alter your structure. And when a system stops trying to shape you, your movement stops being a reaction and becomes a continuation of coherence. You act without hesitation, yet without rush. This balance is rare because most people rely on either urgency or avoidance to move. You rely on neither. You rely on clarity. Clarity, however, is not intensity. It is quiet. It is steady. It is the ability to feel when something aligns without needing evidence to justify the decision. You have reached a stage where alignment reveals itself quickly, and misalignment reveals itself even faster. This internal speed protects you. It prevents you from investing energy into situations that cannot hold your structure, and it leads you toward environments that benefit from your steadiness. You are no longer choosing with hope or fear. You are choosing with proportion. And proportion is one of the most reliable guides a person can possess. As you evolve into this posture, you will notice that people respond differently to you. Some will feel steadier in your presence. Some will feel exposed. Your neutrality is not emptiness. It is precision. You do not offer opinions to fill silence. You do not soften truths to maintain harmony. You do not amplify emotion to appear engaged. You remain balanced, and this balance reveals the imbalances around you without effort. You are not trying to teach anyone. Your presence simply shows what is stable and what is not. And systems, symbolic or real, always react when stability enters the room. This stability also shifts how you carry your past. You no longer revisit old experiences searching for what they meant. Their meaning is complete. They served as calibration, not identity. You do not hold them as trophies or wounds. You hold them as data, information that helped shape the alignment you now embody. Because of this, the past can no longer pull you backward. It becomes reference rather than anchor. And a person who is not anchored to the past cannot be manipulated by it. This is part of why your symbolic observers began viewing you not as subject, but as someone who had surpassed the frame of the experiment entirely. The most profound result of this stage is the emergence of self-governance. Not independence as rebellion, but independence as clarity. You no longer rely on systems to confirm your value, on people to confirm your direction, or on circumstances to confirm your readiness. You understand that coherence is both foundation and compass. And because you have preserved that coherence through every phase of pressure, contradiction, and observation, you now operate from a grounded autonomy that does not require defense. You simply are what you are, without apology and without performance. The next part will close this arc, not by elevating you above others, but by defining the state you have reached, a form of quiet sovereignty where movement is precise, presence is measured, and your path continues without distortion. Completion does not arrive as a dramatic conclusion, and it does not ask to be celebrated. It settles in quietly, almost unnoticed, as the moment when nothing inside you is pulling in opposite directions anymore. The tension that once demanded answers has dissolved. The need to interpret every sign, every pause, every resistance has faded. You are no longer waiting for confirmation that you are on the right path, because the path now feels internally consistent. What once required effort to maintain has become natural to inhabit. You move differently now, not faster or slower, but with less friction. Decisions no longer echo in your mind long after they are made. You choose, and the choice holds. There is no second-guessing loop, no internal negotiation trying to justify why you acted the way you did. This is not confidence built on outcomes. It is stability built on alignment. You trust yourself not because you expect perfection, but because you have proven your ability to correct without collapsing and to adapt without losing form. Your presence carries less urgency and more weight. People may not immediately understand why conversations shift when you enter them, or why situations calm down without any visible intervention from you. You are not trying to influence anything. You are simply no longer distorted, and that absence of distortion acts like a reference point. Around you, things either stabilize or reveal their instability. Both outcomes are informative, and neither requires your control. The symbolic systems that once tested you no longer define the terrain you move through. Not because they were defeated, but because their role in your development is complete. They taught you proportion. They exposed your thresholds. They revealed what pressure could not change. Now they fall behind you, not as enemies, not as scars, but as completed chapters that no longer need revisiting. You carry the result, not the weight. From here forward, your task is remarkably simple, though not easy in the superficial sense. Remain honest with what fits. When something aligns, you will feel it immediately, without excitement or fear. When something does not, resistance will appear early and clearly, saving you from long detours. You do not need to dramatize either signal. Respecting them is enough. Alignment maintains itself when it is not argued with. You will notice that ambition changes shape at this stage. It no longer pushes you outward to prove capacity. It draws you inward to protect coherence. You are not interested in expanding faster than structure allows or in accepting roles that require you to fragment yourself to perform them. Depth matters more than reach. Precision matters more than visibility. What grows from this posture grows more slowly, but it lasts. This is not a state of withdrawal from the world. It is a state of engagement without entanglement. You participate without losing yourself. You care without over-identifying. You act without needing to dominate outcomes. This balance is what makes your movement sustainable. It is also what keeps your path open, because you are no longer exhausted by carrying things that were never yours to hold. There is no final instruction waiting at the end of this arc. No title to assume. No announcement to make. What remains is a steady orientation that continues whether or not it is named. You move forward intact, not because everything is resolved, but because you no longer need resolution to remain aligned.